Hello everyone, welcome back to another Swans cast match preview. Only got one of these up yesterday, but obviously midweek fixtures, that's what happens. It's quick and fast, and such is the life in the Championship. And today, ahead of Sunderland on the weekend, which is weird to be talking about considering I haven't seen the result of the Watford game yet, but I've got Graham Falk here. Sorry if I've said your name wrong. I just couldn't stop thinking of the podcast name you just told me, and I didn't want to mess it up. I started laughing in my head, and yeah, if you want to, maybe everyone will get the joke when you introduce your podcast.
You actually got it spot on. So many people think it's Falk, and it's not. It's Falk. So the podcast I'm from is What the Falk, or What the Falk, if you prefer. Not the most catchy name for Sunderland perspective. Started as a uni project and sadly continued long after uni and into my actual journalism career, and the name's just stuck. But yes, just a Sunderland podcast chatting about Sunderland things and all that.
Still made me laugh. I don't know why. Just all of a sudden I was like, am I saying this right? Because of how obviously the pun in your podcast, and that's what was going through my head. But yeah, I'm glad that I got it right.
You did.
Anyway, let's get straight into the football. So, Sunderland fan, obviously had a good season last year. You've finally come back to the Championship, we could say, after a couple of years where I think you were knocking on the door or trying to knock on the door every time, really. Maybe a little bit disappointing in some seasons, but got over the line. So I just want to ask, what happened in the summer? Any key transfers to speak about, or managerial changes or stuff like that?
Summer was a weird one, really, because obviously being a Sunderland fan, you're sort of used to managerial changes. I was after Lee Johnson getting sacked when we lost 6-0 at Bolton, which, God, that was draining. I went down from Scotland for that game. I'm based in Glasgow. And Johnson got us to a point, but then would always go on funny sort of runs. So Alex Neil comes in and I think he drew his first game, then lost his second one, and then we were unbeaten in 17 and came up to the playoffs. And to be fair, as happy as we've been with a manager in a long time, since harking back to Sam Allardyce, probably in the Premier League days, Sunderland, as they would be, as always, even when we like the manager, the manager does tend to go. But the summer was really positive. We won at Wembley. We've got a big Wembley curse. It was great. And a lot of the players that we had on loan that we wanted to stay or out of contract that we'd have liked to stay and felt could contribute to the Championship season did end up staying. Lyndon Gooch signed a contract. Jack Clark signed permanently. Patrick Roberts signed an extension on his contract as well. The only one that really got away was Nathan Broadhead, which is sort of a long story. And then we brought in the likes of Ellis Sims, who added to the squad as well. We could have done with a few more numbers in the summer. And then we kind of all cried out for needing a striker towards the end of the transfer window because we played two up front, Stewart and Ellis Sims. And we said, well, if one of them gets injured, it leaves you with one. What if two of them get injured? I'm sure we'll get onto that a little bit later. And we've left ourselves with no strikers, basically. But we brought in 4 young boys on transfer deadline day. We brought in Abdullah Bar, who's looked excellent. He came in from Le Havre. I think I pronounced that right. I don't know. We brought in Edouard Michoud from PSG on loan, Amad Diallo from Manchester United, and we also brought in Jewison Benetti, who is allegedly the greatest Costa Rican that ever existed. And to be fair, he's not been too bad so far. But the recruitment was actually really good in terms of the players that you've brought in. I can't really say any of them have not really achieved that well or done better than we expected or as good as we expected. The problem is, and this is just my opinion, we knew we needed an extra striker in case any of our strikers got injured, and we'll get into it, but lo and behold, 2 of them got injured. Probably the most interesting thing, just to mix in the managerial change here as well, was I don't think you'll be not used to this because I think it happens at every club, but there was obviously a slight fracture between Christian Speakman, who's our head of recruitment, and does our recruitment in the main, and our manager at the start of the season, which was Alex Neil. Numerous times Alex Neil mentioned he wanted more players in specific positions, and he specifically wanted to bring in, I think, experienced Championship players, which is not really our model necessarily. There's 1 or 2 that have came in, like last year. Danny Bart came in, he came from Stoke. Corey Evans, he came from Blackburn, but we won't spend money on players over 24. It's just not seemingly the model, whether you agree with it or not. which I think the plan and the project has to have a little bit of balance sometimes, but that's just me. Alex Neil, a lot of the time, mentioned that he wanted to bring in more players, and at one point he said, I can't knock the chairman's door and the head of recruitment's door down anymore. There's not a door left. And there was sort of a sign of problems, a fracture between them. And then we started really well. We all kind of forgot about that a little bit and thought, well, if we could bring one or two more experienced players in, Alex Neil deserves the trust. There was a point, I think he only lost one game at Sunderland, or two games at Sunderland, one of them against Sheffield United in 23. So his record was great with us. And lo and behold, Stoke come in, we all go, ha ha ha, he's not going to go to Stoke. Why would you go to Stoke when we're in such good form? And he went to Stoke. So we had a managerial change right at the beginning. The best thing I would say about the managerial change, agree with it or not, for the reasons Alex Neil went, whether you think, he should have been backed or whether you thought he was backed, no matter what your thoughts on that process are, probably the benefit is when a club is so united behind a specific message or a specific feeling, in this case being Alex Neil is a bit of a snake, you tend to get united quite fast. I think it was devastating news to begin with. And then it became, well, he's a snake, let's get behind Tony Mowbray. And in the main, we're still in early days of the Mowbray reign. That's benefited us because we've kind of continued on and probably played slightly more attractive football, if anything, under Tony Mowbray. But it's a long old season. But the first 12 games, if you'd offered me where we're at now with the upheaval that we had with the manager, I would have snapped both your hands off for that.
Alex Neil is a snake. That's what all the Sunderland fans feel then, is it?
A lot of them do, yeah. I think I'm probably slightly more nuanced and kind of worried that he was a little bit frustrated. I did not expect him to go to Stoke. I really didn't. But I think a lot of people felt he went for the money. I think the biggest thing that rankles with us is the rumours came through on Friday, his press conference was cancelled, and then you're like, uh-oh. He didn't actually get confirmed till the Monday. We had a game on the Saturday live on Sky, which he let his assistant take charge of while he watched Stoke versus Blackburn. Now, rightly or wrongly, for the reasons that he went, be it personal, be it money, be it he didn't get on with the head of recruitment, you don't go and watch another club, whether you're going to them or not, when your club is playing on the Saturday. Be a bit more classy about that and at least wait till the Monday if you're going to go and manage the team like a professional. But he's gone. So ultimately, it's... For me, it's wasted energy, but it's nice to see that in general, everyone united behind Sunderland as a club as opposed to going, oh God, everything's terrible like it normally is with Sunderland.
Yeah, that is good. If it makes you feel any better, they're not exactly doing great today since he's gone there. So
I'd love to tell you I didn't watch them get hammered off Watford last week, but that would be a complete lie.
Okay, so you said you'll start the season, you've touched on it there, it's been quite good since you've obviously come back into the Championship. Take the names out of it, and sometimes the guys coming up from League One, it's a tough season at the start, but you finding yourselves at 7th position. Maybe when you put the names back in and it's Sunderland, you've got a stadium that holds nearly 50,000 people. Perhaps you're a club that shouldn't have been in League One in the first place, but on your way back up. So how has your start of the season been? And do you think you can maintain this potential playoff push going into the rest of the season?
I think it's a funny one, really, because, like I say, I would have snapped your hand off for what we've got and where we're at the moment. But I think there's a couple of worries that are coming in, which are weird, really, which is probably because of the expectations being raised. But I think, as I said at the start of the season, if we can finish 15th, I'll be absolutely delighted with that. And I still maintain that. I think the interesting thing is how big momentum is. And I mean that both ways. Like, the pendulum can swing pretty heavy both ways. I think, we got relegated twice, and that was because the mood around the club was awful. We were mismanaged, and we got relegated with players like, Lee Cattermole in the team. Josh Maggio was up front, coming through as a youth team player. We had the likes of Adam Matthews, who played in the Champions League, and it was just an awful season in the Championship. And we just plummeted through it and finished bottom 2 seasons in a row, and it was the worst experience of my life. Wonderfully documented on Netflix. Thanks, Netflix. And I think maybe that it's been true the other way, that, the feeling around the club's been excellent since Alex Neil came in, pretty much. And since we got promoted, for once, it felt like things were going right. And then we started the season with we had a home game against Coventry, which we conceded late. Then we won 3-2 at Bristol City. And then we drew 2-2 at home at QPR. And then we've had other good performances against Sheffield United that haven't yielded points and so on and so forth. In general, maybe one or two performances, we've been really, really good. I think maybe the frustration is, and this is maybe just because our expectations have been pushed higher, is we conceded late to Coventry. That was frustrating. That was probably because we ran out of legs around 70 minutes. Against QPR, we were actually 2-0 up in the 87th minute and conceded a free kick, which was their first shot on target, and then their goalkeeper scored in the 93rd minute, which, I mean, when does that happen? Sheffield United, we were the better team for 30 minutes, then Daniel gets sent off. It was a sending off, but it's frustrating nonetheless, and we lost that 2-1. Norwich, we hit the bar twice, and we got beat 1-0 late on. So it's like the points that we have dropped, you're kind of like, that could have been wins, but I think where we're at the moment, like present day, like how am I feeling the day after the Blackpool game? We've been the better side probably against Preston and Blackpool in the past two games. Unfortunately, do them both 0-0. As I sort of alluded to before, a lot of people were saying we need a third striker. There was sort of a chase with Nathan Broadhead, who I had on loan last season. He scored 10 and 20. He has got his injury issues. That looked like it was almost tied up. And then he went to Wigan, which was, I don't know why he's gone to Wigan, but he's gone. That's the point. We needed someone in as a third choice striker, in my opinion. Some people said, how do you convince someone to come in as third choice striker? But I think it's relatively normal for a club to have three strikers, whichever way you look at it. Yeah. Ross Stewart's massive for us. Ross Stewart's our best player far and wide, in my opinion, and he's proven it with his form since he's come in, is one of the best strikers in this level. And I think the level he can go is potentially even higher. I don't think he'll be top 4 level, don't get me wrong, but he's, you see Kiefer Moore playing in the Premier League. Why can't Ross Stewart? He, against Middlesbrough, 8 minutes before kickoff, pulled his thigh, got a grade 3 tear in his thigh. Then you're suddenly going, oh no, we've only got one fit striker. And then what goes and happens? The one fit striker goes and damages ligaments in his toe. In the last two games, if Ross Stewart's on the pitch, I know you can't really look into the crystal ball, but if Ross Stewart's on the pitch or just something to hit, just a focal point, we win those games. Like, we play really nice football. We get into the box, and then you just kind of see that there's a striker missing. We got away with it for 2 games. I think the Reading game, which was where Sims got injured, kind of took Reading by surprise because we suddenly changed to like 4 midfielders as our forward line with like Roberts and Clark, and we just played nice, intricate football. And I don't think they quite knew what we were doing. And we were tremendous that night, and we won without a striker for sort of 70, 80 minutes of the game, I think. And then we went to Watford and played really well and scored twice. And our new defender scored, Alessi, who's been excellent. He's just recently came in. And the young boy from Costa Rica, Jewison Benitez, scored, and everyone went mental and mad, and the guy doesn't speak a word of English, and everyone's hugging him, and everything was great. The past 2 games have shown that we're struggling without a striker. So I suppose in a roundabout way, we're very, very happy. Things feel very, very positive, but there's a little niggling thing in the back that says, I know we weren't aiming for the playoffs, but imagine if we didn't get those injuries, and imagine if we just brought in a couple of players to cover certain positions. Could we have potentially done a bit more? But I think in the core light of day, if we finish between 7th and 10th come the end of the season, I'll be absolutely delighted. Anywhere but League One, and I'm pretty much delighted.
Yeah, I think a lot of, just don't get relegated is sometimes the way you look at this league. If you're not expecting to go up, it can be tough, and it can be very tight as it is right now. But you did mention a couple of your players, and I know you're struggling without a striker. You did touch on some names, but is there one or two specifically that Swansea fans should be aware of to watch out for that could be the difference if you're going to take anything from this game?
From an attacking sense, yeah, definitely. I think Jack Clark's been excellent, and I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't too enamoured with him last season. He really came into his own, sort of coming off the bench and starting in a couple of the playoff games. He's just continued his form into the season. I think he scored 3 from the wing. I think the goal we scored against Reading, which was like a wonderful passing move. I think it was 8 passes. No one had more than 1 touch, and 20 seconds to score it. It was a brilliant goal, one of the best team goals I've ever seen Sunderland score in my lifetime. And a lot of it was the first touch from Jack Clark, just to bring it down and bang it in the bottom corner. He scored a header on the opening day of the season against Coventry, and he scored a wonderful solo goal against Rotherham, where he basically just took on 4 or 5 players by cutting inside and just kept going. He's a dangerous player. He's really had a good season this season. I think last night he was a little bit under par, and you could see he worked very well on Ross Stewart's there because he's got something to hit and something to play off. The game before Ross got injured, Jack Clarke assisted twice for Ross Stewart, and Ross Stewart then assisted for Jack Clarke to score that goal.
Love them partnerships.
Yeah. And it's really disappointing. Like, I can't begin to speak highly enough about Ross. He was fit all last season. I think he played every game, and lo and behold, he gets injured. But, there is still players in there. There is still players that can score goals from midfield positions. Patrick Roberts scored twice against Reading. I think people know Patrick Roberts' potential and have seen him at City, Fulham previously when he was a young boy. And he had a really good time up here for Celtic up in Scotland. And Patrick's a really talented player that will cause problems. He's like a winger. Like any winger that's got a lot of skill and talent, he can blow hot and cold. But when he blows hot, and he's currently in decent form, he's very good. But I'll probably pinpoint 2 of our centre-halves, actually. Danny Bart, we brought in last season on a free transfer from Stoke. I think his second game, he scored a diving header own goal. And we were like, oh, God, what have we got? He's quietly been probably our player of the season. He's just a solid 7 every week. He's just a championship centre-half, and that's the only way I can describe him. But compared to what we've seen recently, over the past 4 years, a championship centre-half feels like Franco Baresi for us in some ways. And then alongside him, weirdly, Dennis Serkin, who is like actually a left-back, but we play like a back 3, so he was playing a left-sided centre-half where he sort of backed Jack Clarke up. He was up there with one of our players of the season, and he coincidentally got injured. He might actually be back for Saturday, at least on the bench, but I'd be really surprised if he actually got in the team, because the guy that's replaced him, which is Aji Alessi, who was the former captain of West Ham's under-21, under-23 side, he came in to replace him, and he looked awful in the one cup game he played, and we were like, oh God, what is this kid? He's been absolutely phenomenal since he's came in. He plays on the left-hand side of a 3. He kind of works as like a left-back, as a centre-half. He's tall, he's got speed, he's good in the tackle, his anticipation's good. He looks a real find, and I think we only paid about 500,000 for him. So you can probably tell from the way I'm describing the rest of the team. If we had a centre forward, I think I'd be feeling incredibly positive about Sunderland as a whole. But Sunderland can never be perfect. But I think in an attacking sense, Jack Clarke, Patrick Roberts are your main 2. Pritchard's a great player. He's not been on form recently. I don't know if that's because he has got nothing to hit. He's a number 10. He's got nothing in front of him. He's mainly been playing as the forward. So Pritchard's a bit out of form. But in defence, Danny Bart and Alessi have been phenomenal, and a big reason that we haven't conceded that many goals recently.
Yeah, Danny Bart does stand out to me in defence there. I think he's definitely a seasoned championship centre-back. I'm just wondering then, because I've noticed your defence looks like it's been quite strong this season, not necessarily conceding too many. The last couple of games, you've had a couple of clean sheets. How tough is that going to be for Swansea? And what players do you think maybe can do the damage for us that worries you, maybe that can maybe break through this strong defensive line?
As much as I haven't watched a lot of championship football over the past few years, because we were in the Premier League for 10 years and then we parachuted through it and then we ended up in 4 years for League One, I think you do pick up names and you do see players. And obviously your forward, Piero, I think he's the Dutch boy you got him from Sparta Rotterdam.
From Ajax, I think.
Was it from Ajax?
He might have been on loan at Sparta. He was on loan somewhere before, yeah.
You can see the amount of goals he scored last season. But someone I've watched a little bit more in the flesh, because I think, as I touched on before, I'm based up in Scotland, in Glasgow. So my fiance is a mad Scotland fan. So I watched both games against Ireland, one in the flesh and the other week, and the game when he scored that absolute screamer against them in Dublin. And I think pace always worries me. Like, I've never liked pace because I think pace is just massive. I grew up I know he never kind of really reached the heights that as an Englishman I wish he did, but Michael Owen, and his game was all about pace. And I think whenever I've watched Obafemi, he just seems absolutely lightning quick. And the worry for me is sometimes you get a centre forward that looks lightning fast but can't hit a barn door with a banjo. In the games I've watched, especially the first one, he definitely can. Danny Bott, as much as I've talked him up, if he's got one flaw in his game, it's pace. He is pretty slow. His reading of the game and his strength are his big pluses. But if he gets strong pace against him, yeah, it's a worry. But I'm sort of hoping you play him a little bit more off the right, because Alessi, who I was mentioning before, is strong as Knox, probably about as fast as Obafemi is. But I don't know if he's been playing very much, but one that sticks out a lot that I've always thought was a decent player, and I think even though he's getting on, he will be obviously a player you'll know well, Joe Allen, but I don't know how often he's really playing for you. I assume he's not
injured.
Back. Is he injured? Well, that's all right then. That works for me. He's actually scored against us for Stoke a couple of years ago, and I know he's not a big goal scorer, so Joe Allen's like one of those names that kind of puts the panic in me a little bit. But I think Swansea are obviously like a lot of teams are coming up against, are a good championship outfit that, you know, the more we're playing championship outfits, the more we're seeing kind of where we lie. And I think Swansea away is a really tough game. My worry being the fact that you've got two centre forwards that can score goals. In my opinion, we don't at the moment at all.
Just want to correct myself. Joe Pro came from PSV, not Ajax. I don't know why I said Ajax. I'm just thinking of the big clubs in the Netherlands. But yeah, it's PSV. But yeah, he was on loan at Sparta Rotherham the year before we got him. So that's probably where you've made that connection.
I thought so.
Yeah. I can't believe I said that. I was going to be coming at me in the comments now, I'm sure. But as for the way we play in, if I don't think they either start with both Obafemi and Peru. If he does, it will be Peru that's probably on the right with Obafemi down the middle. But I think it will be Peru starting as striker in the middle, and Obafemi will probably replace him unless we're chasing the game, and then they might both get on the pitch. That's probably what will happen based on what's happened recently, and an upturn in form based on them playing in those positions, and other players in the positions that they would have to kick out don't necessarily deserve that, specifically Ollie Cooper, I think. But yes, I don't think he'll start them both. For your left back, he'll probably have to worry about Matthew Soranola the most, and he probably won't have to worry too much. That's all I'm going to say. But he's got a good cross on him, actually, and he's done all right going forward recently. He scored, actually, against West Brom, although it wasn't necessarily a wonder goal or nothing like that. He had a free header in the box from a corner after the keeper came out flapped and missed the ball. So it's not really credit to his work on the right.
Yeah.
But positionally, he's been a bit suspect. So when he goes forward, gets in good positions, it's on the reverse where he's perhaps not performing as we need him to. And when I said about attacking our wings in your podcast, which if anyone wants to check that out, obviously you mentioned earlier, that's where probably a lot of our opportunities for that we can concede might come from his side, based on what I saw against West Brom, because he just wasn't anywhere. Like, there's a player out there every time you're like, why is anyone there blocking a cross? He's just not there, like, doing the job, and then you tell him to run, try and block the cross, but it's too late because you've had the chance to like pick where you want to put it, basically. So that does worry me a little bit.
With the form of Jack Clark, I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a stinker at Middlesbrough. The best thing about Jack Clark is the fact that he never really hides. And he spent a lot last season cutting in, and it did my head in. Now he's kind of learned to go left or right. So if he's in any way, shape, as a form a bit shaky at the back, then to go back to the question a little while ago, Jack Clark's definitely the man that you've got to sort of make sure he's not in the game.
If he sticks himself on the wing and spreads the play on Soranola's side, maybe that could work for you. But how do you see yourselves setting up and approaching this game? I think you mentioned earlier about counter-attacking style. So I'm just wondering, what do you think you're going to sort of set up like?
I think it's weird because we have like we are quite an attacking team in many ways, but like it feels like most of our goals come from when we turn it over. We don't necessarily go in with a counter-attacking game, but a lot of our better goals have come from that. Like the 3 goals we scored against Reading, it's weird.
It's funny you say that because most of the goals that we concede come from when we get turned over. So
yeah, well, that benefits us, I suppose, in that sense. But that's kind of where we're quite dangerous, especially without any strikers. That's kind of what we need. I think if we're Preston and Blackpool sat in a bit and we can play nice football around them, but nothing really to hit. And the Reading game was quite weird. Like, we actually dominated the possession quite comfortably, but our 3 goals came from the one time Redden tried to get forward, and then we just kind of turned them basically with one-touch passing. I don't think we'll change too much. I don't think we can. We only made one change last night, and that was we played Diallo was like the focal point. It didn't really work. It's not really Diallo's fault. He's just not a centre forward. I mean, Ellis Sims and Ross Stewart are probably a few inches taller than him, give or take. Are probably about a foot on each because they're both big boys, and Diallo's just not the same kind of player, let alone is he the same physical ability. So there might be a change there. We might just revert back to like having Pritchard and Embleton as like the 2 false nines, or one of them as a false 9, and then Jack Clark on the left and Roberts on the right. We sort of play like this. I think a lot of teams do it, but we play like that back 3 that reverts to a back 4 when we're attacking. If that makes sense. Like Onai and Danny Barr and Aji Alessi will be your back 3, but when we go forward, Alessi turns into a left back and Lyndon Gooch drops from a right wing back from a right back into a right wing back, and Gooch can kind of play both. He's predominantly throughout his career been a winger, but we're likely to have them 3 in the back. We'll have Corey Evans will be sitting in the sort of defensive role, who had a really good game last night and has had a really good season, truth be told, again, just quietly performing really well. You'll have Jack Clark on the left, you'll have Patrick Roberts on the right, and then you're going to have like a load of midfielders basically trying to play as centre forwards. The likes of Pritchard, maybe Dan Neil, and I think Elliot Embleton will probably come in. Although there is rumours that we might play Jewison Benetti as kind of centre forward. He's a winger and he's so raw, it's unbelievable. But in a good way, it's kind of he's a young boy who's from Costa Rica. I think he's 17, 18. Can't speak a word of English, but he's Costa Rica's youngest ever international. Scored on like his 2nd game. He hasn't started a game yet, but he's looked decent whenever he's came on the pitch. And I think because we're so stuck with options of going up front, I think people are going, well, what about him? Because he's a bit more direct. Yeah. People are even mentioning putting Aji Alessi up front, which tells you kind of how desperately we need a striker. I pray and hope Ellis Sims is fit, but I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's a million miles away, but I cannot see him being fit for Saturday. So I think we'll kind of stick with what we've done, but maybe take Diallo out and maybe bring Daniel back in, sit Daniel back in the midfield and push Elliot Embleton as your false 9, or maybe Pritchard as your false 9. Ultimately, we need a forward. We'll probably play nice football around you, but I'm a bit more confident going into this game than I am the 2 home games because you'll come at us, so it gives us a chance to kind of put some nice football together and maybe catch you on the break, as opposed to playing nice football around the box and having nothing to hit.
Yeah, it sounds like if you're keeping the ball and we keeping the ball, we could have the makings of a lovely 0-0.
Yeah, our 3rd in a row, that would be.
but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Obviously, we've yet to play Watford, so could I say about the momentum and taking form into this game might change after tonight if we get drubbed. So who knows? But and injuries and stuff like that, it's could be some changes by Saturday. Hopefully not, but can't say yet because unfortunately I haven't seen the game yet. But yeah, thanks for joining me. If you would like to finally end on a prediction then, and we can see what happens.
I can't really go against something and I can't deviate from what I said on my own podcast. So I said 1-1. We're more likely to just go away from home, just the way it is at the minute, just the way we've been playing. We scored 2 at Watford. We scored 3 at Reading. We scored none against Preston and Blackpool at home. So I think we'll get 1. I don't think we'll keep another clean sheet. Like I said, my worry is your centre forwards, and I think one of them could get 1. It's not a confident 1-1. I'm not going to lie. I'm not overly confident about the game on Saturday, but I'll say 1-1 because I can't go against my own team.
That's fair enough. I'll keep it consistent as well. I said 2-1 on yours, so I'm going to say 2-1 again. And what I actually said was, and I'm sure Swans fans will relate, I wouldn't be surprised to see us carrying what is decent form, even if we lose against Watford tonight, into an early start where we perhaps get a goal or 2 in the first half. Ultimately concede, and then it's a bit of a squeaky bum time towards the end of the match, holding on. Whereas a lot of times this season we haven't held on. First time against West Brom when I saw our players go to the corner and just stay there. So maybe we're learning and maybe we can hold on this time. So I'm saying 2-1. we'll have to wait and see Saturday. So good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday. Obviously not too much this week. And thanks for joining me again. As always, everyone who's watching, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment about your prediction for the game, what you think of the Sunderland team, perhaps, and their season so far. And yeah, we should catch you on the next one. Thanks for joining me, Graham. If you want to just remind everyone where they can find your stuff, obviously I came on your channel just before this to do a bit of a preview there. So if you want to watch that, you can check Graham out at.
So it's What the Falk Pod on Twitter, which is basically just me chatting a lot of rubbish and trying to be funny via memes, which doesn't really work. I'm a paid journalist, not a paid comedian. I should learn that. If you want to listen to the podcast, and obviously you want to hear the views of us, we always do a review, as many podcasts do, of the Swansea game. I know that can be quite interesting hearing the opposition view. So if you want to, it's just What the Falk Pod, and Falk spelled Falk. It's available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and I think there's other ones out there as well, but they're the main ones.
Okay, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks.
And as I said, good luck for the rest of the season after the weekend. And
right back at you. Thank you very much.